The UK will start to return migrants to France in a new pilot scheme agreed between the Prime Minister and French President Emmanuel Macron under the one-in, one-out deal. Some arrivals will be returned to France, and in exchange the UK would accept an equivalent number of asylum seekers.
But will it deter migrants from making the journey across the Channel from northern France in small boats? Well, joining us now is the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. A significant moment, a concrete plan, albeit for a pilot. But when you look at the numbers, the estimate is around 50 will be returned under the pilot scheme. And then you look at the average being 800 people coming across in a week. A couple of weeks ago, it was 2,600 people coming across. Is it going to be any kind of deterrent at all?
Good morning, Kate. Good morning, Adele. Well, I think this is a groundbreaking agreement because we've had 6-7 years of this small boats chaos. And in all of that time, it's not been possible to return people to France where the boats have taken off from. And so I think this is the right thing to do. It means for the first time, people who have arrived on dangerous, illegal small boats being returned to France, and in exchange, people who have applied lawfully, who have gone through an ordered system and security checks, and who are most likely to be genuine refugees coming to the UK as part of that exchange in order to make it work. So, you know, I think this is something people have frankly wanted to see, people being able to return who have arrived on small boats for a long time. And this agreement does now mean that that can happen. And we'll do it alongside the changes that France has announced on changing their maritime rules so they can intervene in French waters. Again, something that's not previously happened. And we in the UK will strengthen our crackdown on illegal working because, frankly, it's been too easy for people to work illegally. We've already increased arrests and raids, but we will go further and change the law to do that as well.
Problem is, the optics on what people feel and experience doesn't build on that idea, does it? Only yesterday, on this show, our cameras, along with many other cameras, captured a boat going up and down the coast near Calais, just south of Calais, picking up people illegally crossing. Not a French police person in sight, nobody stopping them. And it just feels like you're almost stopping the tide coming in, really. And so when you hear of a deal with those small numbers, you just look at that, as we're seeing on our screens, and think, well, it's no deterrent at all.
Well, I'd say two things in response. Firstly, we've not fixed the ultimate numbers, either for the pilot, for the first phase, second phase, for the way in which we roll it out. We obviously want to extend it as far as we can. Secondly, we obviously do need that stronger enforcement in French waters. Those rules, all the way through this chaos, those rules have prevented the French authorities intervening. And so the criminal gangs have taken advantage of that. That's why they load people up in shallow waters. And it is disgraceful that they do that.
We're paying a lot of money. How do we ensure that we actually see the result?
So that was part of the agreement yesterday, and it's part of what President Macron said, it's part of what the French Interior Minister has said, that they now have a new maritime review that they have undertaken, which means that they will now change their tactics in French waters. They're not setting out the detail of how they'll do that because they're not going to show the criminal gangs the different ways to do it. We obviously want to see all of that happen as swiftly as possible. But I think the thing we need to do when we see those disgraceful scenes that you rightly talked about, because nobody should be making these dangerous boat crossings, is we need action across the board to prevent people travelling in the first place, to go after the criminal gangs with much stronger law enforcement and the new counter-terrorism powers that we're bringing in that are going through Parliament at the moment, alongside the returns and alongside the intervention in the water as well.
Yvette Cooper, the one thing you haven't mentioned, which when you were Shadow Minister, you used to say a lot. In fact, you went on protest to talk about safe passages and safe and legal routes. Here's a picture of you in 2020 at a Safe Passage rally with the slogans behind you, refugees need safe passage. You're not mentioning that at all now. And the border force, the very people who will have to implement any strategy or any policy that you have, they, via their union, the Public and Commercial Services Union, are saying the only solution are safe routes and actually a scheme similar to Ukraine. apparently they've asked to meet with you. Apparently you haven't. So why haven't you met with the very experts on the ground? And why have you changed your tune on this?
Well, I think, look, firstly, the UK will always do its bit, as we've done through Ukraine, and I think we previously talked about the Syrian family scheme in 2015, which was something that I had argued for that helped families at that time in that crisis, but to do so through an ordered and managed way in which you can ensure that people are being supported, because all countries have to do their bit when you have the humanitarian crises and conflicts like we've seen in Ukraine. However, what we shouldn't have is these dangerous small boat crossings where criminal gangs are making a total fortune, hundreds of millions of pounds, from things that undermine our border security and put lives at risk. That should not be happening, and that is why we are strengthening the law enforcement action against those gangs and working to prevent those boat crossings.
But will you
in fact, what this... Sorry.
No, I was going to say,
Sorry,
thank you. But will you look at more schemes then, and reopening these schemes for Afghanistan, which a lot of people say isn't working, Syria, people coming from Iraq? You say that they go hand in hand, but with these schemes, you speak to the experts, it's just not possible. Will you look at those as well?
Well, I don't think that any approach to those sorts of safe routes prevents things like boat crossings unless you have the much stronger law enforcement and you're taking action on the gangs, and also what we're going to be piloting with France, which is returning people who arrive on these dangerous and illegal routes, returning them to France. But to be fair, as part of this agreement, what it does mean is that those who apply lawfully from France will be part of that exchange. Part of that one-for-one agreement is that if people are abiding by the rules, if they are applying through a lawful scheme, then on a one-for-one basis, those are the people who will be able to come to the UK, but only in exchange for us returning people who have arrived on dangerous boats, because, frankly, that should be happening because these boats are just making a fortune for criminals.
But can I ask you a question? Have you met the Border Force team then? I mean, if you speak to Wes Streeting, he will say he's speaking to doctors all the time, speaking to nurses all the time. It's extraordinary that the union are claiming they've been asking you to meet them and you haven't met them. Why is that?
So I met with Border Force officers yesterday. I meet with Border Force officers all of the time, and all ministers do as well. So we, of course, have meetings throughout. In fact, I've talked to many Border Force officers who are working at Western Jetfoil who are having to deal with the consequences from these dangerous boat crossings. Talking to Border Force as part of the new Border Security Command that we have set up that brings together not just Border Force officials, but also the National Crime Agency and the experts who go after serious and organised crime, bringing them together as well.
Are they wrong when they call for a scheme, then? They've got that wrong, have they?
So I don't think you can... I think anybody who thinks that if you just... if you provide a safe route and then that's somehow going to stop people going on boats, I just think is not understanding the way in which these criminal gangs work. Whatever you do, you have to go after the criminal gangs and you have to tackle these dangerous boat crossings. That's what we're doing as part of the returns pilot that we've agreed with France. That's also what we're doing as part of the stronger law enforcement. It does mean that people who apply lawfully in France will be part of that exchange, but it means that where people are taking that illegal action, frankly, we should be taking the stronger enforcement and making sure that those gangs are not profiting from putting lives at risk, which is too often what they're doing.
All right. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.